Well, let's talk about some practical advice when it comes to reference architectures and why they're important. My name is Robert Cherneski, Product Manager here at Panduit and our world headquarters in Tinley Park, Illinois. I'm here with Al Eaton from our Corporate R&D Department, who has done a lot of work on reference architectures with our alliance partners, as well as with customers. Al, one of the things we want to talk about today is reference architectures, especially what's important and what's changing. You know, when we've worked with a lot of customers and trying to put together a data center design, they often have given us an old or outdated reference architecture, or one that's really not relevant to the goal of a reference architecture, which is to evolve to new technologies, to give them flexibility and also give them reliability long term. What do you see as the importance of a reference architecture to clients?
I think one of the important pieces for reference architectures for clients is it gives them the ability to get a good understanding of newer technologies that are moving forward. In the past, IT teams had to go from the beginning and try and learn everything on their own and evolve what they want, so then they get a baseline and then they start doing their design work. What reference architectures are giving us the ability today of is to jumpstart that investigation process. So we get to a point, we can review the reference architecture, now the IT team can look at that one or multiple ones and build a design from that. So they're not starting from scratch all the time anymore.
Okay, yeah, that's the key in starting from scratch. But a lot of people question, why should I spend all this time up front investing in reference architectures when I'm under the gun to get the design and implementation done and oftentimes an aggressive time frame?
One of the problems is prior planning, right? So as much prior planning that we can get accomplished will make our design go easy. So some people will say, I don't want to look at those reference architectures. That's just going to take me time to review them. But the problem is then in the back end, the design process is going to take a lot longer. The other problem is then maybe the design won't fit their need. Where if they took a little bit of time up front and reviewed reference architectures, multiple reference architectures, they would be able to pick the one that fit their business need better, and then base a design off that baseline, and at the end they're going to have a design that's going to work better in a shorter amount of time because they're doing more investigation up front.
One of the things we wanted to cover is change, and I think what would really help is to understand the evolution of reference architecture.
In the past, we did a reference architecture based on Cisco's 3-tier model, which is a very logical architecture. So we took that logical architecture and made a physical layout or a physical architecture for it, so we can see how it physically would manifest itself. Today what we're seeing is fabric-based networks, which is getting away from that 3-tier architecture and shrink it down, fat tree and fabric-based. So now what we can do is figure out ways to modify our environment so we can evolve into fabric-based networks if that's the way the business makes sense for us to take our networks.
What's sometimes the elephant in the room or the unspoken element that really needs to get out and get discussed in order to have a sound reference architecture?
I think one of the biggest things that you have to get that elephant in the room is that a reference architecture is a good baseline. And people in the past felt they had to start from the beginning or it wasn't truly their design. Which I think now what we're doing is we're seeing a reference architecture just get you a lot of knowledge very, very quickly. And people have to understand that just because you didn't think about it from the beginning doesn't mean that you're not really thinking about it. Reference architectures are just a baseline. So we're understanding those baselines to be able to do our design. Now we can pour more effort into our design piece. Instead of figuring out technology, we can understand technology and go right into our design piece for that.
Yeah, so these modular building blocks that we talk about with reference architectures, what do you see vendors and other companies are doing to help speed up the deployment based on a company's reference architecture? They're developing different things. What are some things you're seeing out there in the market?
I think what we're seeing is using a reference architecture, there's some common pieces within a reference architecture, which are like building blocks or pre-configured systems. So now what we can do is look at those pre-configured systems. If they fit into a design, we can order an entire pre-configured system to roll right into our facility. The other nice piece about that is a pre-configured systems will give us consistency, not only in our current environment, but if we're a global company, we want to roll that out in Europe or Asia or anywhere else, that pre-configured system will be consistent globally now. So now we're managing things exactly the same way globally.
So we kind of covered a lot. What other things do you see changing in regards to how you need to think about reference architectures? And why should the customer care about some of these changes so that they're integrated into their reference architectures so that they can have a scalable infrastructure?
I think what we're seeing now with some of the changes in reference architectures is they're getting more and more advanced. So they're starting to look further and further down the technology pipeline, let's say. So they're already starting to look at next generation networks. So by understanding these reference architectures, we can now have the ability to take our facilities and be able to grow or evolve. Instead of rip and replace, we actually can build a facility that will now evolve into the future architectures that the business needs. That's the whole key here, is we want to make sure the business is driving technology, not technology driving technology just because it's technology.
Yeah, so what I'm kind of hearing is, one is you're trying to evolve new technologies, you avoid the rip and replace, but more importantly, this is not just about IT. It's about the collaboration between multiple disciplines, IT, facilities, management, external partners, all using a common language.
And that's the biggest key. In the past, the IT guys did theirs, the facility guys built something the IT guys had to deal with. Well, with the margins and everything else getting real tight, they have to work together. And not only that is, they have to see what partners out there are doing. Different companies are bringing to the plate. So they want to have an environment that's working for everybody and not just, I did my part, now it's your part. It's our parts now, or this is the biggest key now.
Okay, so it's no longer throwing it over the wall, saying the other guy needs to take care of it.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you so much for covering what's really important to reference architectures and why should the customer care about them.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.